the world doesn't really care. They go to hospitals, they arrest people who were wounded, they death check.
A death check in the hospital means
You make sure the person is dead by shooting them in the head. They make people take their clothes off, and if they have gunshot wounds, they're arrested.
without external action, say from the United States of America or Israel, it's pretty much impossible for them to overthrow this regime.
The world betrayal was said more than once right after the 12-day war because Israel and the states didn't finish the job. There were probably more than 1 million people on the streets, maybe millions of people, non-Iranians, fighting Iranians on the streets with battlefield weapons. The world cares when a report is published. And that's it. I still don't think that the West should kill him. The system is built to replace people. It's not a one-man dictatorship. The best book to understand what's going on now is Iranian mythology book. I do know from mythology that a monster you have to kill from the inside.
Is there a real fear within Iran that actually something might not be coming at all and that Donald Trump might yet break his promises? I'm Jonathan Sacerdoti. Just quickly, before we begin, I love these conversations and I hope you do too. Please help me make more of them. Like this video, subscribe to the channel and leave a comment to tell me your thoughts. It will help the channel grow and it will help me do more. You can even make a donation using the link in the description. Dr. Tamar Eilam Gindin, welcome back. The last time we spoke, you were with me in Tel Aviv, and that was, I think, 7 months ago, during what became the 12-day war, day 5 of it. And you described an Iranian regime that looked weak rather than confident. And you were very clear that much of what we were seeing was driven by fear and not control. Now, lots happened since. Has your assessment changed since then?
Actually, reality proved the assessment that the regime is weak. During the months between the 12-day war and the current, I don't know if I should say uprising or revolution because it hasn't ended yet. So, but they do call it revolution. So in these few months, we could see that the regime, on one hand, is trying to appease the people. It tries to equate the Islamic Republic with Iran using ancient Iranian symbolism and history. For example, King Shapur, who was a few centuries before Islam, but Emperor Valerianus from the Roman emperor surrendered to him. So they started using him as "you will kneel again before the Iranians" and calling the Islamic Republic Iran, or allowing women to go out without hijab. They did go without hijab for a long time, but they decided to completely or almost completely give up hijab enforcement. And we saw street concerts with a lot of people having a lot of fun. That's on one hand, okay, equating the Islamic Republic with Iran, easing up on the hijab and street concerts. On the other hand,
And that's before January this year you're talking about.
between the war and the uprising. On the other hand, right after the war, there were checkpoints on the streets, there were house-to-house arrests, and executions skyrocketed. If we had more than 900 executions in 2024 and the world was shocked for about 2 days, in 2025, we passed 1,000 in September. And by the end of the year, there were about 2,000 executions. I don't have an exact number because each human rights organization states another number, but they're all between 1,800 to 2,200 in that vicinity.
And you said last time very clearly that executions are a sign of weakness, not strength. So how does that current pattern of repression fit in with that reading, especially as we know that since the 8th of January and onwards, we've only seen an escalation of that as well?
As one of the reasons that they try to appease the people or prevent war, okay, both the hard hand and the soft hand were more extreme, is because they thought they didn't have proxy forces to come and help them during an uprising. because Assad fell, because Nasrallah was dead. They didn't have the Lebanese soldiers that used to come by the thousands to help them in each uprising. Right now, according to what we see on social media and according to reports by physicians who treated the wounded people from the demonstrations, there were a lot of people in the streets. There, again, not enough Iranian people who agree to fight their own brothers and sisters. So there were Hashd al-Shabi people coming from Iraq. There were militia people coming from Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Sudan. Again, non-Iranians fighting Iranians on the streets with battlefield weapons. It wasn't, police or demonstration weapons.
And this is to put down the protests or uprising, as whichever we call it, that basically the IRGC and associated forces have been calling in really people from outside using battle weapons, not crowd control or the like. Though the IRGC and the Basij don't tend to make much distinction in how they treat the Iranian people, right?
Right. And I think a regime that has to suppress demonstrations with such forces, with so much backup from the outside and with battlefield weapons, is not a strong one. And you can also see that the spirit is not dead. One of the fears during the demonstrations was that if it doesn't succeed this time, when we've gone so far, and there were, according to assessments and according to what you can see on social media videos, there were probably more than 1 million people on the streets, maybe millions of people, following Trump's promise that if they start killing protesters, he will come in, and following Reza Pahlavi's call for demonstrations on that particular night. They did very extreme things that we haven't seen before, like burning mosques. I think we talked about the identity pendulum of the Iranian people last time. I'll recap. Iranians have actually a double identity, or they had. Right now, the pendulum is swinging very strongly to the Iranian identity. But in the 1970s, when the Shah tried to strengthen the Iranian identity, the Muslim identity gained strength. And now, because of the Islamic Republic that suppresses and oppresses the people and all the atrocities that are done in the name of Islam, the pendulum swings very hard to the Iranian side. This is how we saw burning of mosques. And even religious people who are not regime supporters say these mosques should be burnt because they are not houses of God, they are houses of oppression.
So these are Islamic or Muslim Iranians who are against the regime and the way in which they see it using Islam to oppress the people. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that what I see on social media and on videos that come out from the inside is that a lot of Iranians, I don't want to say most Iranians because I don't have statistics, but many, many, many Iranians don't see themselves as Muslim at all. They say we have no religion. But even those who are Muslim believers are largely against this regime because they say that the oppression that is done in the name of Islam actually desecrates Islam.
A lot of Iranians that I know here in the UK, they may have been brought up Muslim, or they may be culturally or traditionally Muslim within their family, but they don't have any belief. It's kind of often for many of them enforced upon them anyway. So I think I get what you're saying about that.
What we saw in reactions to the video of the big mosque in Saadat Abad that was burning, and the crowd yells "Iran, Iran" while watching the mosque burn, the reactions, the comments under it were, "We have been suppressed for 14 centuries, and we're not real Muslims." And when other Muslim users were horrified to see a mosque burn, and they said no real Muslim would burn a mosque, no matter how much they disagree with their government. But Iranians wrote, "That is correct. We are not true Muslims. We're not real Muslims." And we can even see it in funerals. you can see that in funerals, they don't call the people who were killed in the protests are not called shahid, which is an Arabic word and an Islamic concept. They're called Javid Nam. Javid means eternal, and Nam is name. It's pure Persian, and it's not Islamic.
Hmm.
And the funerals turn into protests, and the eulogies, I hear eulogies in pure Persian, which is very hard to speak. Pure Persian without an Arabic component is very hard to speak, but they do it beautifully.
When we spoke last time, you said that Khamenei was sick, possibly demented, but also you stressed that it would have been a grave mistake for Israel to kill him, as many were discussing at the time. Do you think that still stands? Firstly, how is he, from what you can tell, coming out from Iran? And secondly, would it be a grave mistake now for, let's say, America to kill him?
Um, Yesterday he came out of his hole. I'm saying came out of his hole because during the 12-day war, he got the nickname Mush Ali. Mush means mouse. Because he stays in his hole. He came out because today, as we speak, February 1st, is the anniversary of Khomeini's return to Iran. He went to Khomeini's mausoleum to pay respect and to show that he's not afraid. I assume that afterwards he went back into the hole. Some say, and I also sometimes get the feeling that he is not told the whole truth. It sometimes sounds so unconnected with reality. The things that he say about the big victory in the 12-day war, or other things that seem like he doesn't really know what's going on. And one of the rumors say that his advisors don't tell him everything because they don't want to make him sad. He's an old man.
So, I mean, if that's the case, if he's now just the figurehead of the so-called revolution of the Islamic Republic, and he's not even fully informed himself, what good would killing him be if there is, in fact, around him a whole machine that's even bluffing to him to keep this tyrannical, theocratic regime in power? Surely he's unimportant at that point.
I still don't think that the West should kill him. Maybe he should be killed by the by the Iranian people, like Saddam Hussein, like Gaddafi, who were killed by their own people. I don't think the West should do it.
Or what about like a sort of Venezuela, kidnapping, trial, imprisonment somewhere else?
It's not a one-man dictatorship. What that could do is, again, there will be someone else at the head of the Islamic Republic. I realized that of all the books I wrote, the best book to understand what's going on now is Iranian mythology book. And in Iranian mythology, the bad guy, called Zahak, he's originally a three-headed dragon, but from the 10th century, they wanted to make it more realistic, so he's an Arab prince with two snakes growing out of his shoulders. And these snakes eat brains of young men. Every day, 2 young men are killed in his kitchens to feed the snakes. And if you Google in Persian Khamenei Zahak, you find a lot of pictures of Khamenei with 2 snakes on his head, on his shoulders, and sometimes skulls in his hands. And when Feridun wants to kill Zahak, who is a descendant of the king who was deposed when the Iranians called Zahak to rule on them. When he tries to kill Zahak, when he cuts the head, it grows back. When he cuts one of the snakes, it grows back. When he cuts an arm, it grows back. So killing one person, even if it's the head person, killing or kidnapping, is not going to do it because the regime or the system is built to replace people. We also saw it in the 12-day war. The people that Israel made Shahid were replaced within hours. I'm not a strategist, but I do know from mythology that a monster you have to kill from the inside.
So if he were removed violently, let's say, you're saying effectively the psychological or institutional effect would not necessarily be the one that's desired by those on the street in Iran or even by those outside in America or the West, Israel. It would not necessarily be. It could just be a continuation of the regime, new leader, same regime.
There are a lot of analysts, also in the West, who quote articles by people from an organization called NIAC, the National Iranian American Council, that's actually the Islamic Republic lobby in the States. For example, in Encyclopedia Iranica, okay, these NIAC or the Islamic Republic lobby is so strong that even the Encyclopedia Iranica article, it's a university founded encyclopedia. The article about Israel-Iran relations after the revolution was written by Trita Parsi, who is the founder of NIAC.
On screen, he's very kind of respectable looking guy.
He's a scholar. He does have a PhD in international relations. And this is why a lot of analysts who read secondary sources instead of primary sources believe what they write, are then quoted, and they meet politicians and are then quoted saying that the Islamic Republic will change and that the people want someone, a reformist instead of a conservative as a leader, or maybe even someone secular or not clergy as the leader of the same regime. But you just have to listen to what they shout in their demonstrations to understand that this is not what the Iranian people want. They say, "Islah talab usulgara dige tamum majara." The reformist, conservative, your story is over. And they do shout the name of Reza Pahlavi. It doesn't matter what I think about him or you or any other analysts. The people in the street shout his name.
So when it comes to Pahlavi, like there's a lot of discussion whether he would be capable, whether he could do this. And there have been these statements that, he knows of a certain number of those within the IRGC ready to defect, those sorts of statements. But I think that even Trump has expressed some quiet doubt about him. And many Iranians I know are furious about that sort of thing because there is the need for a leader around whom people can unify, even if they're not perfect on paper. But do you see that his position is strong enough in the event of the collapse of the current regime? Is his position suitable even for a transitional period to kind of marshal in some form of change which will be more democratic, some kind of constitutional monarchy? Are the associations with his family in the past and the negative feelings about that once going to return? Is he a suitable replacement? And, does anyone within Iran feel that way truly, or is it wishful thinking?
Okay. I agree that there should be a figure to unite around. Now, if you asked me 7 months ago, and when we met in Tel Aviv, what I think, I would say it seems that he has more support than any other opposition option, even if it's not complete support or even if it's not a majority. During the protests, they say his name. They don't just say in these protests, not just "Mar bar diktator," death to the dictator. They say Javid Shah, long live the king. They say in akharin nabard Pahlavi barmigerde. This is the last battle. Pahlavi is returning. January 8th, the night with the huge demonstrations and huge massacre. They went out to the streets. I think that the actions of the crowd, the fact that they were much bolder than any other demonstration, was mostly due to Trump's promise that he would not repeat Obama's historic mistake from 2009 that cost the lives of about 200 people. But the fact that there were so many people in the streets is because of his call. He said, Thursday night, 8 p.m. Iran time, we all go to the streets. And they did. So these are two things. They say his name. They obeyed his call to come. And when the Islamic Republic blocked the internet, his videos dropped from 20, 30, 90 million views to 2 to 6 million views, which means most of his viewers are from the inside. So regardless of whether he can or is capable or is suitable or everything else, he is the one they want. This is what they're calling for. So yes, there is opposition. There are people who think otherwise, mostly abroad, but also inside Iran. You can't expect everyone to think the same. He says he doesn't want to be an absolute ruler like his father. He wants to take Iran gently from this era of dictatorship to democracy without the chaos that usually ensues in the middle, and that afterwards he might be part of the democratic game if he is elected, or be a symbolic king, or not at all. And I believe him because he doesn't seem he grew up in a democracy. Most of his life he spent in the States. And he didn't seem so avid to be a ruler or even leader until 2023, when he stepped forward during the Woman Life Freedom protest. Up until then, he cooperated. He agreed to be the figure, but he didn't really take steps. And from 2023, he's really branding himself as the leader. He spoke in all European parliaments, in the European Parliament, in the Munich Convention for Security in 2023, that usually invites heads of states. He was invited to represent Iran, he and Masih Ali-Najad, who was his number 2 in the democratic movement. The short-lived democratic movement, because in Hebrew we have an expression that say like shooting inside the armed vehicle. The opposition in Iran is like that.
So those who are opposed to the regime in Iran, in the Islamic Republic, aren't all actually on the same side. Tell me a bit about the MEK in relation to that.
The MEK, or Mujahideen Khalq, is one of the opposition organizations that is most organized. They have a shadow government. They have a president for that shadow government. They used to have the West's support until Reza Pahlavi branded himself as the leader, which is a good thing, because Iranians, both regime supporters and opposition, agree that they are worse than the current regime. They're a cult. They have all characteristics of a cult. They're very religious, and they're communist. And in the Iran-Iraq war, they were on Saddam's side. And what we saw in LA, there was a demonstration with lion and sun flags in support of the protesters in Iran. And a truck with MEK slogans drove through that protest, sending some people to the emergency room. And then when the protesters attacked the truck driver, the media in, I think it was in San Francisco, said, you see this peaceful driver going in and getting attacked by violent protesters. They are trying to win some PR from this, from these demonstrations. I think it was Rudy Giuliani who said, look at all the protests in Iran. It's all the MEK organizing and doing this. When, if you listen to what they say, Magbar se fasid, mola chapi mujahid. Death to the 3 corrupted people, clergy. Chapi is left. They mean like world, like the woke left. And mujahid, which is Mujahideen Khalq. They're one of the fears that when I talk to people in Iran after the Arab Spring and before Pahlavi started to really step forward as a leader, some of them said that one of the reasons we're not going out on the streets is that we're afraid that the West will impose the Mujahideen Khalq on us. And that's something we prefer the current situation.
Am I right in thinking there is quite a lot of regime interference as well to set people in the opposition against each other? Constant allegations that people aren't really who they say they are, that they're really acting in favor of the Ayatollah, that they're not truly against the regime. And a lot of that could be actually manipulated by the regime in order to disrupt the opposition.
I see that they have something bad to say about each and every activist, and it really looks like an influence campaign.
Yeah.
A few months ago, maybe a month or two ago, Elon Musk um, launched a feature on X that if you click on the time that people joined X, Twitter at the time, you can see not only when they joined, but also where they're tweeting from
Yeah.
and whether they're using proxy or not. And you could see that many of the regime supporter accounts, but also some allegedly royalist or separatist accounts were actually government accounts because they tweeted directly from Iran, not using a VPN, which means it's a government account.
So many past protests, the regime has said it's separatists who want to tear the country apart. Can you talk a bit about what's going on there?
Um, these demonstrations, like they prove that they do rally around Reza Pahlavi and that they are united around a specific character, a specific figure, they also proved that these attempts of delegitimation are not true because everybody shouts for Reza Pahlavi, the Baluch, the Kurds, the Arabs, the Turks, Azeris. Um, they all shout Javid Shah, long live the king. They all shout for unity. The Baluches said the Wahda Etihade, it's time to unite. The Azeris said Turk, Fars, we have to unite and save this kingdom. They say kingdom. Um, so it's not that separatists don't exist in the West, and particularly in Israel. There are a lot of people who say we should arm the separatists to ruin the Islamic Republic. They say to ruin Iran, which it will ruin Iran if they strengthen the separatists. But the separatist movements are not the majority, probably, and some separatist accounts on social media, especially on X, after Elon Musk exposed the white lines, were revealed as white liners. There are Kurd and Turk separatists who actually tweet from Iran without filtering, or Baluch separatists who tweet from Pakistan. The people inside Iran, the ethnic minorities do want their equal rights because right now, especially Kurds and Baluches are largely discriminated against. They want their rights, but they don't want to tear the country apart.
Inside Iran, you talked about the executions and the massive amount of executions before January, but also since. And who do you think the real audience for those executions is right now internally? Is it the street? Is it the security forces? Or is it rival elites within the system?
I think it's the Iranian people because in the world doesn't really care. The world cares when a report is published, and that's it, more or less. Uh, I give an interview about it for 2 days, in the media, but then in my lectures, people don't remember it. I I repeat it every time, and they're surprised every time.
But so it's genuinely to quash the actual unrest, let's call it, within Iran. It means people are afraid.
Deterrence.
Yeah.
It's deterrence. But now I'm not sure what we'll see execution wise in January because they go to hospitals, they arrest people who were wounded, they death check. There are a lot of reports on death checks in hospitals by security people. There are reports by doctors that they were not allowed to treat wounded people.
Meaning what? Sorry, death check in the hospital means.
Death check is death confirmation. You make sure the person is dead by shooting them in the head. And doctors say that they were not allowed to treat wounded people from the demonstrations, only security people, and that these security people were, for a lot of them, were foreigners, were Iraqi, Sudani, and so on. And doctors who treated patients in their clinics or who released patients before security forces came were arrested because they didn't let security people arrest or death check these people There are stories. These stories I heard not through social media, but through two different people who talked with people from the inside. Um, Maybe it's a good time to say I don't talk directly with people inside Iran because I never know who's in my computer and phone. So I'm only in touch through third parties in third countries. And I heard from more than one source about checkpoints in the streets. They make people take their clothes off, and if they have gunshot wounds or plastic gunshot wounds, they're arrested.
Mm.
So it's really crazy, and I think that all these arrests don't show that the regime is strong. It shows weakness.
Is there any plausible scenario in which removing the leadership actually weakens elite cohesion then rather than reinforcing it?
Um, it has to be a lot of the leadership, uh, and maybe also IRGC leadership. You mentioned that Reza Pahlavi said he's in touch with people from the security forces.
Right. I mean, have we seen defections? As far as I'm aware, following it, we haven't seen the level of defection that might be desired or helpful in this circumstance, right?
Right. Not significant.
And is that out of fear of executions and violence, or is it because there is some degree of loyalty and enough numbers? I mean, you said they're bringing in people from outside to clamp down. Does that indicate weakness in numbers, or it's hard to ascertain as an outsider what that means?
I want to talk about Reza Pahlavi recruiting, and then I'll answer your question because it's also interesting. Um, he, right after the 12-day war, he posted a video calling Iranian security people with no Iranian blood on their hand to join him through a QR code on Iran International. He said, "Don't scan it anywhere outside the website of Iran International because it can be very easily forged and made into a trap." And he said that he had 50,000 people enrolled.
And just to be
That's
clear, Iran International is the opposition Iranian channel, so to speak. It's not state
one of
television.
the opposition
Yeah.
Iranian channels, yes. And he said he had 50,000 people enrolled, but that was before checking and verifying.
So people scanned that QR code, but it wasn't necessarily verified. You said, meaning some people might have been scanning it out of interest from outside, say.
Out of interest, maybe doubles, maybe people from inside the regime who want to know what he's doing. So we don't know how many of these 50,000 are real, and I think they need more certainty that it's really happening. That the IRGC was formed based on the mistakes they learned from mistakes of other dictatorships, because when the army changes sides, it's over. So there's the army, which is the People's Army, and there's the IRGC, which is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. It doesn't have the word Iran in it.
Right. It is the army of the revolution. It's there to protect the so-called revolution, which is the theocratic, tyrannical regime that is oppressing the Iranian people. So in that case,
And we wanted to talk about not enough Iranian people because the Basij is huge.
right.
But
And the Basij is connected with the IRGC in that it's the sort of ground level forces who are policing people on the streets, right?
the Basij, yes, but it's a volunteer organization. It's not these people have day jobs. Some of them are high school students. Okay, but it's like a student association, but they have it in every workplace and every high school. And some people join the Basij for the card because the card to Basij gives you discounts in stores. It gives you safety. Like in Israel, if you're in the army, you don't get checked in the entrance to malls. They
Yeah.
just show your car.
But in the sharp end, it's an enforcement tool that is there literally to spy on or inform on or punish actual people in your own circles, right?
Yeah, that's the ideal. But a lot of people just are there because it gives them, benefits. And a lot of the protesters who are killed carry a Basij card. And it happened more than once or twice. It's actually not not news anymore. But a lot of the protesters are killed carrying a Basij card, and then the Basij says they were Basij people and the terrorists. They started calling them in the beginning. They just called them like bullies, and now they're terrorists. The terrorists killed them, but then the family says no. He had a Basij card because he was a Basij member, but he was killed as a protester. And so the fact that you have a Basij card or that you're listed as a volunteer doesn't mean that you'll go beating up your own people. And there are also videos of people burning their Basij cards and saying, I don't want to oppress my own people. I was used as an oppression tool against my own people. And there are people who just, uh, get the command and go home.
So,
Not,
in a way, what you're describing is a regime that has been quite clever in its ruthlessness in managing to recruit large numbers of people, even just nominally, but into the Basij. And similarly, it's made it virtually impossible for IRGC members and troops to defect. Indeed, every attempt, like the one you mentioned of Pahlavi with the QR code on Iran International, or even that, I mean, it's perhaps the best he could do, but it doesn't really help him assess numbers. He can't really share plans with any of those people because IRGC people who haven't truly defected will know about them that way. It means that without external action, say from the United States of America or Israel, it's pretty much impossible for them to overthrow this regime, doesn't it?
yes, and in principle, I'm opposed to what's called nufuz, which means influence and penetration or involvement of other countries in Iran. But what we see now is that the Islamic Republic is using external forces against unarmed people, and the people are asking for it.
But haven't they always been asking for it? Because in that respect, I think from an outsider's perspective, it's always been the case that the people of Iran, since I can remember, have been desperate to overthrow this regime, and it's my whole lifetime. And every single time, it is down to something like Barack Obama throwing them under the bus. It is down to the fact that during the 12-Day War, Israel, for its own reasons, maybe quite justifiably, didn't, let's say, finish off the job for regime change. It finished off its job. And each time you come across many, many Iranians inside and outside Iran desperate, saying, bomb us, bomb Tehran, cheering on Bibi Netanyahu. Even I've seen Israeli flags asking President Trump. It seems really tragic for them that, for often very good reasons, these external actors, at least visibly, are not getting involved. Obviously, we know that internally sometimes there are uh, Mossad or other agents who are actually on the ground helping things along. But it's a sort of catch-22, isn't it? Because external involvement, as you're saying, could be detrimental in the long run, but no external involvement is detrimental in the short run and the long run.
Right. So I think that it's time for external involvement. I don't know if the leaders of the world are capable of it, but if they can help but not take over, that would be the best. Help now, support during the transition, and then countries are always involved in other countries' affairs, but not to exploit Iranian soil and people as we have seen in the past. The the problem with external involvement is that the regime will say, you see, they already say it anyway. It's Israeli terrorists, it's American terrorists. I saw today something posted by an Iranian white line. White line is the people who tweet directly from Iran. Um, by a white line user on Twitter. It's the lies about the truth and lies about this terrorist attack. It even has the logo of the Islamic Republic on it, and they say The lie is that the Islamic Republic security forces killed people, and the truth is that most bullets found in the street belong to NATO. Um, People don't believe it anymore. That they are trying, and they say that there were 3,000 people who were, or 3,000 something, who were identified. There are a lot of bodies that remain unidentified because there were so many bodies that not everyone could find their loved ones. But out of the 3,000 and something who were identified, they claim that about 2,000 and something were security forces killed by the terrorists. It's things that you just have to follow social media, talk to people, and see what they tweet when they do get an outside line, to understand that it it has nothing to do with the truth. And also, if it's terrorists that killed the Islamic Republic security forces, why did you block the internet?
Well, and again, I think hopefully people in the West are more awake to this now, even if there is a sort of reluctance in much of the Western media to really engage with what's going on. I mean, the fact that the EU has now banned the IRGC finally, in response, the regime in Iran has declared European armies as terrorists. So when they classify anyone as a terrorist, I think people in European states ought to bear that in mind. But these statements, things like that do show the techniques they're using. I mean, just seen today that Khamenei has said the issue between America and Iran, in his opinion, can be summarized in just two words. And those two words are: America wants to swallow Iran, and the brave nation of Iran and the Islamic Republic are the obstacle. This kind of framing that they do, it is more than just internal delusion, isn't it?
It is a delusion. You just need to listen to the protesters and all the demonstrations outside, their demonstrations outside Iran in support of the Islamic regime, but you don't see Iranians there.
Well, I mean, for example, here in the UK, here in London, we still haven't banned the IRGC. The government finally said, under this pressure of the EU doing so, that they're going to try and change the law so that they might be able to do that. And they weren't fast tracking that, was the report. But in the meantime, we have in the UK this Islamic center not far from where I am now, which is basically a regime center. Everybody knows it. You can see from when they gather and what they protest over, whose side they're on. We have even the supreme leader's son, I think, it was revealed by Bloomberg, a massive property empire involving luxury property here in London, in Bishop's Avenue. I think they reported in Bloomberg. It's a mansion, among other properties. These sorts of things actually show, I think, that there is a lack of seriousness in the United Kingdom and elsewhere in doing even those things which we could do. If we're allowing them to launder and stash money, if we're allowing them to have actual regime centers, if we're allowing regime supporters in the UK to beat up anti-regime protesters in the streets of London, what hope is there for the Iranian people?
Uh, I think the Western media uh, was really, how can I say it gently, didn't do what it should have. Um, the BBC gave an interview, gave Pezeshkian the right for an interview while they were killing the protesters, and he was, of course, narrating the regime's narrative of terrorists that are operated by Israel and the United States, and the Iranian people don't want this. Um, or where are all the people who were protesting for Gaza now that the Islamic regime is killing protesters by the masses? I think it's because there are a few reasons for that, as I see it. I think the West doesn't know how to swallow um, Islamic non-Westerns oppressing non-Westerners. Because if one of the sides is Western, it means they're the bad guys. But here, both sides are not Western. If anything, the Iranian people are more Western than the regime. And they burn mosques, so they must be Islamophobic. And Islamophobia is something that we don't want in our places. Uh, the fact that Iranians have been oppressed by radical Islam for 14 centuries and more so for the past 47 years is one of the reasons that they were more or less the only ones who stood by the Israeli people after October 7th. They were the only ones who could identify um, with the Israeli people, and this is also one of the reasons that we saw lion and sun flags in pro-Israel protests, and we see Israel flags in pro-Iranian protests, and there's a lot of discussion about it in Iranian social media, whether we should have Israeli flags in our protests or whether it's pushes back people who might have supported us. And most people are for Israeli flags in the protests. They also yesterday there were explosions all over Iran. Israel, of course, denied any connection with it. The Islamic Republic also denied that it's anything more than accidents. But the people on social media were ecstatic. They were like, "Bibi, we missed you. Where have you been all this time?"
You, last time we spoke, framed the regime's behavior through honor and humiliation rather than through Western cost benefit logic. And I'm wondering, under sustained pressure, when does honor stop being that organizing principle and survival take over?
I'm wondering that too, because becoming Shahid is like a desire, it's a life goal. So just killing a person actually fulfills their desire. Um, I think that it's more about losing power than losing their lives. But maybe somewhere deep inside, they do want to live.
Well, when you see the children of senior regime figures in Western countries living like Westerners, spending like Westerners, acquiring like Westerners, not behaving according to these strict Islamic principles, how much can we really actually grant them that they're acting out of ideological belief anymore?
Um, I I don't know about each of these people, but it does show that even the the next generation is not as Muslim as the previous generation. People say that after this revolution, Iran will be the most secular country in the Middle East, and I believe that is so. And if you look at the regime, they're old. Khamenei, if he survives until April, he will be 87. And Jannati, the head of the Guardian Council, is 99. And his position was extended for another year. And there are a lot of people over 90 in the regime. The younger people are over 60. Very few people who were born after the revolution. So it is going to die out, but if it is the same system, it will just change form, and there will be other oppressive people in the head, which may be more lenient about Western culture, but it will still be oppression. If you listen to what the protesters want, it's freedom, it's democracy, and it's not Islam or anything that resembles the current regime.
So, what behavioral changes would tell you that fear has overtaken honor then? Whether it's fear of the downfall of the regime and its continuation, or fear personally for their lives, that's sort of taken over as the dominant driver inside the system.
There have been rumors, I don't know if they're true, about planes standing by, about people putting money in suitcases to escape. If that's really the case, that would very much indicate that they prefer their lives to being Shahid.
And when it comes to retaliation, so let's say there is a US strike or even a strike of an alliance of Western countries, and the regime decides to retaliate, as it probably will, or indeed if they take preemptive action knowing that America's about to strike, how seriously should we take their threats? They've threatened basically world war. They've obviously threatened the whole region. They threatened effectively the EU now. How much of this could we see as a realistic threat or danger externally?
Regarding a preemptive strike, I doubt they will, uh, because nobody really wants a war, and the Islamic Republic has never attacked first. Maybe the Kurds in Iraq, yes, they attacked the Kurds in Iraq first, but Saddam attacked first in the war with Israel. Israel attacked first. The first two attacks on Israel were following Israeli actions that crossed some red line. So they never attack first. They prefer to be the victim.
To be clear, they may attack first, but only through proxies, I guess is what you mean.
Yes, yes, and then they say that no, they're not proxies. We're just helping a little. But the Islamic Republic itself, and by the way, uh, during the 12-day war, we have seen what they're really capable of. The other two attacks were just to show that they should not be taken lightly. But there wasn't a lot of damage. And in the second strike, just hours before the second strike, there was a terror attack by a proxy terrorist in Jaffa, that killed, I think, 4 people. And that was much more painful. The things they do by their proxies are much more painful than what they do directly. The ring of fire around Israel is weakened to, I don't want to say non-existent because, I don't want to be too optimistic or relaxed, but
Right. Well, I mean, listen, Hezbollah has some juice left in the tank.
Yeah.
The Houthis similarly. Even Hamas isn't completely defeated, and yet Israel has dealt a massive blow to those proxies, which enabled it to then engage directly with the regime in Iran, and that was really the strategy. But you're right that it's not down to zero. They're not totally destroyed, taken off the map altogether. But do we think that what happened, that 7 months ago, you're right in one respect, it showed Iran to be a paper tiger, but in another respect, 28 people I think were killed in Israel. Was it 28? There was a moderate amount of damage where they had direct hits. I know people whose entire home was destroyed around them. They
Sure.
crawled out of bunkers.
during the 12-day war, they showed the real power.
Right.
It
And
was during the first 2 attacks that they just
understood.
wanted to be not taken lightly.
But how much is that real power? I suppose that's what I'm asking. An indication of what might come now when they're cornered, if attacked. Will it be 12-day war level? Will it be worse? Have they got something left in reserve? Or has it been diminished? How much do we know coming out of Iran about what the retaliation could look like?
Um, my sources on that are open source intelligence. It's what they say, it's what I read, and I think nobody really knows. Nobody even knows what the damage was to the nuclear facilities. Um, I don't think they will use nuclear power. They already saw that ballistic missiles do the job. And they do have very sophisticated ballistic missiles. And both sides, both Israel and the Islamic Republic, um, renewed their arsenal of both defensive and offensive weapons. So it is one of the things I can't say what they have, but I can say that as Israelis, we are worried about that. On the other hand, we also saw during the 12-day war and before and after that our intelligence and security forces have ways that we can't even imagine, both to prevent and to deal with these attacks. So we really don't know, but I'm not that panicked.
So in that respect, you're not that panicked, and obviously nobody wants the horrors of war around them, least of all Israelis. And yet there does seem to be almost a will for it to happen and to get it over with if it's necessary. Am I right in saying that? And there's this kind of literally every day, all I see coming out of Israel are serious and comic things saying halayla, tonight. It's become this sort of refrain. And similarly, within Iran, there seems to be a massive desire among the protesters that it should come and come soon. America should do its job. Bibi, where are you? It seems almost surreal to have two sets of people in this way on both sides of this decades long tension and animosity, urging on war, urging on these horrors around themselves, right?
I just saw a graphic on X comparing the civilians who died in the eight-year Iran-Iraq war with the people who died on January 8th in Iran. During 8 years of the Iran-Iraq war, 11,000 civilians were killed. During one night of the January 8th demonstrations, we don't know exactly how many. The graphic said 36,000 people. The assessments are between 12 and 70,000 people, civilians, in one night by the regime. So they're saying we definitely prefer war. And in Israel, it seems that we got so used to war. There are a lot of skits about it, that we're more worried and more afraid of a storm coming, of the weather, than of missiles.
Well, look, I mean, Israel, unfortunately, is a place that is used to war and also has a very, very robust civilian defense system, to protect civilians, a very tough army that's been proven in the last 2 years, albeit one that's pretty tired at the moment. And I think that there is at least on this, a kind of alliance of nations, not least the United States under Donald Trump's presidency, that is pretty serious about this should things kick off. But yet, that doesn't make it any easier for individuals and people within Israel and elsewhere in the region who stand to be bombarded by formidable ballistic missiles and other forms of attack from the regime in Iran. So things are obviously tense, and there is a sort of gallows humor about how Israelis deal with this stuff. I've noted lovingly from the outside, but it's a very serious moment, and there does seem to be an acknowledgement that something is coming. That if it's not tonight, it might be next week. If it's not next week, it might be the week after. Is there a real fear within Iran, from what you see, that actually something might not be coming at all, and that Donald Trump might yet break his promises, and that for every time he says we have a massive armada on the way, or they better not do this, or I'll do that, that these things don't always follow through, and that he can change his mind based on very pragmatic decisions and factors of his own?
Yeah, the world betrayal was said more than once right after the 12-day war, because Israel and the States didn't finish the job. And also now with Trump urging people to go on the streets and protests while not keeping his promise. I think he said it without thinking, which he sometimes does. But maybe if he had started moving his armadas to the area, just moving them, not doing anything, right after he promised, maybe that would have signaled to the regime that they are in trouble, and the outcome might have been very, very different. I don't know. No, I'm not a prophet, but I'm very good at saying what would have happened in a different universe where the choices were different. Um, so the Iranian people, on one hand, they urge Trump to get involved. On the other hand, they also realize they're on their own. So if Trump gets involved, that would be excellent. But maybe they'll also start mobilizing themselves. I'm not sure. It's just speculations. On Friday, or either Friday or Thursday, Trump said, "I said to the Islamic regime, no nuclear weapons and stop killing protesters." He said that's for he has like 4 terms conditions for his for negotiations. One of them was no proxies, one of them is no nuclear, one of them but stop killing protesters is something that the Islamic Republic can't accept. In 2015, when there were the nuclear talks that yielded the JCPOA, very shortly before they reached the agreement, Ali Akbar Velayati, who is the leader's advisor, said that we don't want to show flexibility about nuclear affairs because next thing they will talk to us about human rights and accepting Baha'is, which is unacceptable. So I think human rights are the last thing that this regime would yield to, because if they stop killing protesters, it's their end.
And in fact, the US position that Donald Trump has expressed, and I think also Steve Witkoff has spoken to, is now maximalist. It's a list of things that the regime must do in negotiations to avoid war, to avoid a strike from the US. And as you mentioned, end of a surrender of all nuclear material that might have survived the strikes during the June war. It is an end to uh, all nuclear activity to try and rebuild that capability. It's an end, I think they said, also to the ballistic missiles and the human rights requirements that you just mentioned. So it's basically everything that the regime stands for. It seems to many analysts on the outside that that's Trump's way of saying, well, these are completely reasonable asks. We've shown you once what we'll do if you don't listen to us. We gave you a time limit then. We made at least a pretense of negotiation. So we're doing it again. And the price has gone up, not down, because we thrashed you last time. What do you say? But of course, what they say is, well, what's left to negotiate? And the regime is very good at pretend negotiations. It strung along Obama and much of the Western world for a very long time with the JCPOA. But at the end of the day, they say the Iranians invented chess. And is the fear that they're actually five moves ahead of Donald Trump on this? Or is it actually the case that Donald Trump is calling their bluff every time? He's offering them a way out. It's a way that everyone knows they won't take. And that means war is absolutely inevitable.
That's how I see it. He's asking for things that he knows. I think he knows. I hope he has good advisors that they would never accept. Just in order to say, we tried negotiating, but it didn't work. I think negotiations with this regime are the worst things, especially if they do reach an agreement, because that would give the regime legitimacy. It would give them, they would last longer to kill more people. So it won't be executions or shooting protesters in the street. It would be something else. In Persian, they have a verb for make. I don't know how to say it in English. It's like to commit suicide, but the passive of committing suicide. A lot of a user on X that burnt the picture of Khamenei and was then found shot in his car because he was committed to suicide. Maybe that's the.
Right. So it's sort of, yeah, I hear you. That's quite dark in a sense. And I think that's what Trump is asking of them. It's to commit to suicide or to commit to US strike. So in that respect, what would be your biggest fears for how this could end badly, especially if there's an overthrow of the regime?
Oh, things could backfire in a myriad of ways. The 1979 revolution, which we call the Islamic Revolution, was not an Islamic revolution. It was a revolution of everybody. But the Islamists were the most organized. And nobody thought that they would take over because, according to the sixth Imam, Jafar, clergy should not rule. So they don't call themselves ruler, they call themselves leader. So that's okay. So the MEK could take over, the IRGC could take over. This is why I think the West should also support Pahlavi, because he's the figure that the Iranian people are calling for. Support him also through this transition period, also to help make sure that what the majority of Iranian people want is what happens, and not some marginal group that takes over.
What do you most wish policymakers or journalists would stop assuming about Iran at this point?
They should understand that the worst enemy of Iran is the Islamic Republic, because journalists and politicians and regular people on the streets tend to identify the Islamic Republic as Iran. But no, it is the current occupation of Iran. Some call it the second Arab occupation. The majority does not want the Islamic Republic. Iran is the worst enemy of the Islamic Republic, and the Islamic Republic is the worst enemy of you all.
Tamar, thanks very much for speaking with me again. Let's wait and see if it is Halayla tonight. But we'll watch over the coming days for what's going to happen in this really tense moment. And as you said, I think fundamental to all of this, and perhaps most central to all of this, should be in everyone's mind the people in Iran who are doing what they can to stand up against this regime, who at times seem to have been quashed in their uprisings, but are showing enormous bravery and determination to do whatever they can. And nobody quite knows what the right support externally will be, but let's hope that those decision makers who have the power to bring assistance can find it, can come up with the right strategy and execute it as quickly as possible, because this is an intolerable regime to keep going forwards over and over for those people there. So thank you again for keeping an eye on all these things, and I'm sure we will speak again soon.
Thank you very much for having me.